In the jungles of Malaya, a war is brewing. Thousands of Malayan communist guerrillas prepare to take on the might of the British Empire. The first deadly shots are fired one day in June 1948. It's early morning on the Elfill rubber estate. Manager Arthur Walker completes his inspection round and returns to his office.
3 male Chinese rode on bicycles, parked their bicycles next to his office, and they shot him cold-blooded, and he was killed.
Malaya is engulfed by violence. An emergency is declared.
The emergency in Malaya was a full-scale war.
The first 3 years of the emergency, the casualties were great, very great. Every day there was killing left, right and center.
Malaya's war lasts 12 long years. It will kill more than 11,000 people, both combatants and ordinary civilians caught in the crossfire. But from this terrible experience will rise a modern nation, Malaysia, a nation that learnt the hard way to fight and live together. Kuala Lumpur, the capital city of modern Malaysia, is a vibrant and diverse metropolis. The city is a rich mix of different peoples and cultures brought together by their history. More than 100 years ago, British entrepreneurs begin to exploit Malaya's rich natural resources, above all, its tin and rubber. They bring in workers from India and China to toil in the mines and rubber estates. The British transformed the human landscape of Malaya, creating an intricate tapestry of different races, the predominant Malays, Chinese, and Indians. Many Chinese workers join communist cells to agitate for better conditions. But despite mounting unrest, the British remain firmly in charge. The flow of Malayan raw materials enriches the empire. Then, in early 1942, the Second World War brings British rule in Asia to an abrupt end. In February, after a lightning campaign, the Japanese drive the British from Malaya and Singapore. It is a humiliating defeat. But a cadre of British officers stay on to fight the Japanese, the renowned Force 136. Hidden in the jungle, the British recruit small units of Malayans and train them to harass the Japanese and prepare for liberation. Force 136 also forges close bonds with a much bigger guerrilla army, the 7,000-strong Malayan People's Anti-Japanese Army, the MPAJA, and backs them with arms and equipment to fight the common enemy. This jungle ally is a communist front.
The communists during the war were known as the Malayan People's Anti-Japanese Army, MPAJA. They developed very good jungle warfare skills thanks to the wartime collaboration with Force 136, the British counterinsurgency unit.
For both sides, the pact is viewed as temporary and expedient.
The communists knew there wasn't going to be a long-term marriage,
In 1945, Allied armies finally defeat the Japanese, and the British are back. At victory parades, the MPAJA make sure they have a prominent role, posing as conquerors of the Japanese. Marching with them is a charismatic young man regarded by the British as their most trusted guerrilla. His name, Chin Peng. The British gratefully award him the Order of the British Empire. Even though the war is over, the Communists do not return all their weapons.
They refused to surrender their weapon to the British when the British came back, and they went underground.
有些你在地面上呢挖一个大洞，武器就踩的都放进去。
Chin Peng will soon become a painful thorn in the British side. The British, bankrupted by the war, tighten their grip. They will not give up Malaya's valuable raw materials without a fight.
Malaya, in particular, was one of the colonies which earned more in US dollars than the other colonies.
But the world has changed. The empire is crumbling, and a vibrant Malayan nationalist movement has begun to agitate for independence. But it is the communists who make the most pressing demands. They want the British, their former allies in the Jungle War, to be expelled by force of arms.
Chin Peng had always been in favor of a shooting war, overthrowing the colonial power government by force.
They wanted to take over from the British and turn our country into a communist country.
To begin with, the Malayan Communist Party instigates a wave of strikes, directed at Malaya's mines and plantations, the backbone of the economy.
Anak ayah kita banyak biji, banyak emas, banyak timah, banyak kayu raya. Semua ini harta kita belakang. Ha? Dia ambil daripada situ bawa ke England. Kita tujuan lawan orang putih. Asal jatuh orang putih. Ha.
Everywhere you have strike, every state, every big town, workers will support strike because strike means we will drive out the British, and when the British leave, we will run the country ourselves.
In 1947, there are more than 300 strikes and paralyzing labor disputes.
They had control of the labor unions, and it gave the British authorities a lot of problems.
As strikes and disruption spread, the man in charge, British High Commissioner Sir Edward Gent, comes under intense pressure. The powerful planters and mine owners accuse him of weakness, of failing to govern effectively. Then, events take a sudden turn for the worse. Communist firebrands, frustrated by lack of progress, decide to ramp up the struggle and unleash a murderous new campaign. In a single day, communist gangs shoot dead 3 British planters. High Commissioner Gent finally takes resolute action. He declares an emergency.
Murder, panic, pillage, arson. Malaya was engulfed in a life and death struggle. Communist terrorists from their jungle hideouts struck at Malaya's basic industries, intimidated labor, destroyed factories and machinery, wrecked communications, and murdered all those who dared defy.
It is, to all intents and purposes, a declaration of war. But the British cunningly call it an emergency, so that the planters and mine owners can continue to make insurance claims, usually refused in wartime.
Actually, a smart idea. Don't call it a war. Call it an emergency, so you can actually collect on the insurance due because of damage to property and all that sort of thing.
The sudden escalation takes even the communist leadership by surprise. But Chin Peng reacts swiftly and returns to the jungle to prepare his men.
整个生命都不要抛开家里了，就这样去跟他打过。
他讲打日本是3年0.8个月。打英国人不比3年。
The British brand these young men and women as rebels, bandits, gangsters. They are called communist terrorists, or CTs. But they are a formidable force. Using skills learned from the British, communist leader Chin Peng sends some 5,000 recruits, organized in highly disciplined battalions, to key locations, ready to strike. And Chin Peng has a powerful ally, the Malayan jungle. Hot, humid, well-nigh impenetrable, the Malayan jungle runs from the Thai border all the way to Singapore like a green spine. This is classic guerrilla country. From From remote jungle strongholds, Chin Peng's men can launch shock attacks anywhere, any time, and then melt away.
The jungle was the terrorists' first home. They knew the jungle inside out because they were involved in fighting the Japanese. They had already prepared themselves. They had food dumps, arms dumps. They were at a greater advantage in the initial stages.
In Kuala Lumpur, High Commissioner Gent struggles to control the rapidly deteriorating situation. Hampered by poor intelligence and a ragbag collection of police units and army battalions, he fights back with new draconian emergency regulations.
In a tough counter-insurgency situation environment, you need tough laws to enable the government to have some flexibility to act decisively and resolutely.
Those who are in possession of arms are liable to be sentenced to death.
Emergency regulations empowered the government to search properties, premises without warrant, to detain people without trial, and essentially to impose curfews if necessary.
But Gent's regulations have little immediate impact on the number of communist attacks. Soon he is under renewed pressure from angry British planters.
The first 5 or 6 months were quite difficult and nasty. On the communist side, it was doing these little ambushes all around the countryside, and people thought they were beginning to win the war.
Thoroughly rattled by the state of affairs in Malaya, the Labour government in London recalls Gent, officially for consultations. Unofficially, he's being sacked. As Gent's aircraft approaches London Airport, it collides with another plane and explodes. Gent is killed. Back in Malaya, the communists have the upper hand. The country is plunging into violent chaos. 1948. A war on terror ravages Malaya. High Commissioner Sir Edward Gent has been killed in an air crash. No replacement has yet been made. The security forces are in disarray. On the front line, it is the powerful British planters and mine owners who now seize the initiative. Instead of being cowed by the communist attacks, they are spoiling for a fight.
Their theory was, we kill some of the planters and all will be frightened. The planters will rush off back to UK, so the economy of Malaya will drop. But it was just the reverse. When they started attacking, mostly the British planters and the locals got together and rearmed themselves.
As the communist insurgency worsens, the planters demand reinforcements. The government in London turns to police units that have recently been withdrawn from Palestine. One of the first to arrive is Sergeant Gus Fletcher, and he hits the ground running.
They wanted 500 ex-Palestine police quickly to go. So I wrote to the Colonial Office, and in very short time I was whipped up to London, given a very quick interview, and off I go with the first plane load to Malaya. We were on the plane for 2.5 days. Finally, and thankfully, Singapore slid under our wings and we landed. And then onto the train to Kuala Lumpur. We were in action. As we arrived, we rushed out to an estate being shot up and burnt. And we picked up a dead body. We came back. Hours later, it was now 3 a.m. Before we can even get to bed, another one. We go off to a different direction, another estate.
For Gus Fletcher, it's a shocking baptism of fire, and it seems as if the communists are running rings round the government forces. But as reinforcements arrive, the planters begin recruiting a special constabulary to protect their mines and plantations, and it's an immediate success. At least 30,000 volunteers, mainly Malays, sign up. It's down to new arrivals like Gus Fletcher to ready the specials for the fight.
I'd trained the special constables to use their guns, and we only had one shotgun for every 2 men. And the ammunition, it was pre-war, 1938, 1936 even. And of course when you fired, you would get a click and be a dud.
Whatever the state of their ammunition, the special constables must hold the fort of plantations and mines so that the Malayan police units and army regiments can take the fight back to the communists. But even before they confront Chin Peng's fighters, they must face the Malayan jungle, the communists' closest ally.
When I first entered the jungle, I was utterly amazed. I was awestruck. Twilight and noisy of insects, monkeys and everything making a noise, thousands of mosquitoes and leeches.
The only things I disliked so much in the jungle were the leeches, and the leeches were terrible.
They are all over the place, on the ground, on the leaves. You go underneath and they drop onto your neck and crawl down, and you don't feel it at all until they puncture your skin.
I've literally had 20, 30 to 40 covering my body, mainly around my ankles and in my private parts as well. We won't go into that though.
You go into a frenzy.
The communist fighters, known as CTs, know well that their opponents will be at a chronic disadvantage.
Mana dalam hutan dunia kita bukan? Dia masuk itu, dia macam kata orang itu, busa masuk dalam kampung. Dengar? Dia tak tahu puluh kiri, dengar? Dia gantung kepada itu kompas. Nak hala ke mana? Bukit mana? Sungai mana? Itulah hal lain dia tak kerti dah.
Got to try to navigate through this, which is no landmark for you to see because you're enclosed by the jungle. And all the time you were sweating, falling over, ripping your uniform, and you come to big wide rivers. Sometimes they're not on the map. The maps are inaccurate. And consequently you end up lost.
For young British National Service recruits, this first exposure to jungle warfare is often traumatizing.
In the jungle county, life was very harsh. And I was leading a platoon, National Service people who were shanghaied from the schools at 18 years old. They really suffered because they were not trained in the tropics. And suddenly they're thrown into the jungle. And at night you can hear the boys crying, you know.
But the war on terror is not only fought in the jungles. For there is another communist army that stalks Malayan villages and towns. This secret army makes a vital contribution to the terrorist war machine. Chin Peng's fighters need supplies, food and information, and it all has to come from outside the jungle. So they depend on a network of hidden supporters known as the Masses Organization, or Min Yun. In everyday life, a member of the Min Yun could be a teacher or waiter, a government worker or office clerk. But for their communist masters, they must act as couriers, spies and saboteurs.
The Min Yun is very important. They are the silent group who were the eyes, ears of the communists. They give information of any of the government rules, police raids and so on. They were the very powerful army, people's army.
They have another task too. Every month, Chin Peng must pay every one of his soldiers. So the Min Yun supporters must extort as much cash as they can from villagers and estate workers. If anyone is unwilling or unable to pay these subscriptions, the communists call in the hard men from the jungle.
Chin Peng assumed that just because they didn't want to support the communists, they were immediately traitors.
哪里敢去惹他？凶巴巴的，什么你要顺的，不听的都不可以。
佢上門問你攞女，你唔俾點樣？佢咪捉你殺頭啦！
K.L. Chai remembers his friend, a schoolteacher, who refused to cooperate and suffered a gruesome punishment.
They called him out of the classroom broad daylight and they murdered him right in front of all those who came to see that. They disemboweled him. Oh dear. That was another sad episode of the communists.
The insurgency has become a war of terror.
is that terrorism is a form of political communication. The real intended recipient of the act of terror is not the victim. The victim is secondary. It's unfortunate victim, but it's secondary. The real audience is all of us watching. Because terrorists, regardless of his ideological stripe, whether it's today's kind of new religiously motivated terrorists or the communist terrorists of the past, the aim is always to send a powerful message, a message of fear, of intimidation, that if you do not cooperate with us, this is what will happen to you.
As this campaign of terror escalates, the British look for a way to tackle the Minh Yun. But there's a big problem. They are secretive, faceless. So a new plan is hatched to create a national register of Malayans. Now, every man, woman and child over 12 must possess an identity card with a photograph and thumbprint. Anyone without an identity card, an IC, is instantly suspect.
National registration policy was actually very good psychological warfare, because it really made the communists worried. They wanted to remain incognito, they didn't want to be identified. But if you didn't go out and get identified, then people immediately start suspecting you. So it was a really smart move.
Teams of civil servants and photographers spread out across Malaya, armed with cameras and fingerprint pads. It soon proves to be a hazardous job.
It was quite a dangerous job, because all photographers who take pictures of these civilians and so on, many were taken away by the communists in the dead of the night. They were tortured and then left dead.
For the communists, registration poses a threat to their secretive war, so they fight back. Their aim, to sabotage the registration campaign.
他出登记卡呢，他就妨碍很大。没有登记卡，我们自由啊。他不懂得哪一个马共，他出了登记卡呢，没有的他就可以抓你。这样那时候马共呢，他就实行没收，到处乡村去把他登记卡没收掉。
A favorite communist tactic is to target the buses.
They used to stop the buses, collect all the ICs and burn them. Then they see those who are suspected government helpers, they'll get them out of the bus and take them into the jungle and murder them.
In September 1948, as the violence escalates, the British government finally appoint a new High Commissioner, another veteran of Palestine, Sir Henry Gurney. As he takes up his post at King's House in Kuala Lumpur, Gurney faces a seemingly unwinnable war against a ruthless and determined foe. The Malayan people are demoralized and afraid. It's high time for a radical new approach to crush Chin Peng's campaign of terror. Malaya, October 1948. The new British High Commissioner, Sir Henry Gurney, has arrived to find a war on terror that is close to defeat. In 6 months, the communists have launched 1,274 attacks and killed more than 300 innocent civilians. As soon as he digests this desperate state of affairs, Gurney turns to London and demands reinforcements to fight the communists. To back up the Malay regiment, Gurkhas from Nepal, as well as troops from East Africa, Fiji, Australia and New Zealand arrive in Malaya. Gurney soon spots another so far unexploited human resource, the local Chinese. Many are hostile to communism and horrified by Chin Peng's brutal tactics. To get the Chinese on board, Gurney turns for help to the respected Tan Cheng Lock, the president of the Malayan Chinese Association, which is anti-communist.
It is incumbent upon us, the Chinese community, to rally round the government and give our energetic support to to make a success of this mobilization.
One of the first to answer Tan Cheng Lok's call is a young man called Yun Yuet Leng.
I was training with British soldiers, British police officers, who were all big-sized. And I'm so short and thin. And every morning we used to do physical training, throwing logs from one shoulder to the other shoulder. And my God, being the shortest there, the weight comes on you. I almost died, but I survived.
Yun also trained alongside Malay and Indian recruits.
See, that's how the comradeship is built up, because of the threat of common danger. When the shooting starts, you don't care what race you are. No? You find that your friend is pinned down by heavy fire, and you're okay, you've got a good defensive position. You open fire so that you can crawl somewhere else. And he does the same thing for you. So you save each other.
Soon, Yun will come face to face with the communist guerrillas. More than 90% are Chinese, like him.
So when the emergency started, the British knew that they couldn't deal with the problem, which is essentially Chinese, unless they brought in more Chinese. That's how suddenly there was an influx of a lot of Chinese.
In the meantime, High Commissioner Gurney receives disturbing reports from the central Malayan state of Pahang. A new communist unit known as the 10th Regiment, consisting mainly of Malays, is terrorizing the kampongs of Pahang. No one is safe, not even children. Hamidin Abdullah remembers these frightening times well, and what happened when his friend revealed the whereabouts of a Malay communist sympathizer.
He was about 12 plus. He was showing the house or the whereabouts of someone who was communist sympathizer, you know. But just for that, they blasted his head off.
The shooting of a 12-year-old is only the beginning. Soon afterwards, Hamidin's father is kidnapped.
For 6 months after his disappearance, my father's grave was found. That's how cheap life was to some people.
Kita tak kira. Asalkan hanya buruan penjajah, kita hentam. Sekejap menyungkuh dia kena beding.
The 10th Regiment is not only ruthless, it is a threat to Malay loyalty. For its commander is not Chinese, but a Malay communist called Abdullah CD. Chin Peng has tasked him to recruit fellow Malays to his cause.
Jadi kita nak membesarkan pasukan kita. Membesarkan nak keramai ke anggota, nak banyak senjata.
If Malays start joining the insurgency, the possible consequences are terrifying. So the British must somehow stop the communist virus spreading. A solution is at hand. During the war, the British anti-Japanese Force 136 recruited a dynamic Malay fighter called Yuk Mahidin. He proved himself a formidable jungle warrior. Now the British dispatch Mahidin to central Pahang to eliminate the threat of the 10th Regiment.
British hantar Yuk Mahidin memimpin satu regimen di Tengah Luar untuk mengalahkan Komunis Melayu.
Leading a band of dedicated and highly trained jungle fighters, Mahidin routs the 10th Regiment, and Abdullah CD flees into exile. The threat to Malay loyalty is neutralized. It's a tremendous victory for Mahidin, who is appointed the deputy head of a new Home Guard unit that eventually numbers 350,000 men and women. But still, Chin Peng's communist guerrillas keep up their relentless onslaught. 80 terrorists strike Simpang Tiga, near Ipoh. They burn the entire village. 1,000 villagers are made homeless. 2 weeks later, communist insurgents target a police station in Bukit Kepong. The heroic siege that follows will become a legend of the war. The attack starts before dawn as 180 communists surround the station. Police Commander J.J. Raj was in charge of the police district and knew the station officers well.
They opened fire, you see, for about 2 2 hours the firing was going on, and the police fired back. There was this Sergeant Jamil. I think he himself was wounded. On his leg, right and center, policemen were killed. Behind him, the wives and children were screaming. See?
Suddenly, a bugle sounds, and the guns fall silent. A communist approaches the camp and demands surrender. But the Malay police sergeant Jamil spurns their offer.
Suddenly, Jamil and one or two others shouted back, "We will never surrender." They said no. They challenged the communists. Fight, let's fight, you see. And the fight continued.
The communists hurl a barrage of petrol bombs, and the police station erupts in flames. 25 people die in the inferno, including women and children.
I have never come across anyone as brave as these people. They didn't fight for money, they didn't fight for medals, they didn't fight anything. It is just a matter of my religion, my family, and my responsibility. They were there.
Faced with such relentless violence and an enemy that shows no mercy even to children, High Commissioner Gurney urgently demands backup. It arrives in the shape of a no-nonsense, battle-hardened Lieutenant General called Harold Briggs. Briggs launches a new plan that will transform the landscape of Malaya. Malaya, 1950. The British are fighting a war on terror against a guerrilla army led by Chin Peng, determined to establish a communist republic of Malaya. His guerrilla fighters attack at will, striking anywhere, at any time. Since the beginning of the emergency, the communists have launched 2,716 attacks and killed nearly 700 innocent civilians. On the British side, the new Director of Operations, Lieutenant General Harold Briggs, comes up with an ambitious master plan to smash the communist war machine. To get food, money and information, Chin Peng's fighters rely on Chinese squatters who live in shanty villages located on jungle fringes and so are vulnerable to exploitation by the communists. Their numbers increased dramatically during the Japanese occupation. Briggs decides to target the communists indirectly by severing their links to the squatters.
We have more than 600,000 squatters all over Malaya, and we are accusing them of helping the communists. Give them protection, bring them together, and you will find that they will stop helping the communists.
Briggs' idea is to move every one of these squatters to newly built resettlement villages, built on land provided by the Malay sultans. In theory, these villages will protect the squatters, cutting them off from the communists. Briggs must work fast, so hundreds of security units race across Malaya to prepare the squatters' exodus, whether they want to move or not.
我那个时候是没有办法，紧急派的一些事情，都原政府就叫你搬，每一家每户都搬出来哦。
We had these military lorries, 3-ton lorries all there, ready to help them. We had British soldiers, soldiers from the Commonwealth, our policemen all helping. They bring in their ducks, they bring in their dogs, they bring in their pigs, everything.
The communists, realizing that their supply lines are under threat, try to persuade the squatters to stay put.
The communist terrorists started their all-out propaganda, and the squatters believed them. They said, now look, in Germany and all, millions were sent to the concentration camp, were killed. You now, the government is taking you all to concentration camps, all of you will be killed. So as a result of that, quite a lot of people resisted, so they had to be forcibly brought out onto lorries and taken there.
Despite these teething problems, people are soon on the move all over Malaya. They travel by road, by boat, and train. In just a few months, tens of thousands of Chinese Malayans have been moved. When the settlers arrive at their allotted resettlement areas, they come face to face with the harsh realities of the Briggs Plan. First, they must build their own homes. Worse, the new resettlement villages are gated communities. The squatters are effectively prisoners. They can only leave and re-enter at regulated times, and there's a strictly enforced curfew from dusk to dawn.
它有个闸门呐、然后上面专门有军队在这里守罗。早上6点钟才开那个闸门，下午3点你们就通通回来这里这个范围内，不能够出外的，就关在家里面的，一直到明天早上6点。就这样子，你说你可以想象当时的生活情况是多么惨。
Night was a time of menace and danger. Anyone caught outside the village perimeter could and did become targets.
It was a moonlit night. I saw a shadow. It is outside the settlement area and it is a curfew. Nobody should be there. Cold sweat coming. Because it's not easy to shoot a man. But then I go to shoot. I pressed the trigger and then after that all my men shot.
In the camps, everyday life is dominated by rules. Access to food is rigorously controlled to stop it falling into the hands of the communists.
男人成人1个星期，好像我所记得，我印象中是4斤米，糖盐油米啊，统统有限制的。
But it soon becomes apparent that the Briggs Plan has a flaw. Settlers are provided with land to make some sort of a living, but as soon as they are outside the camps, they fall prey to the communists again, lurking in the jungle.
The communists wait for them in the jungles. And when you're tapping rubber, they come there and say, hey, where's the rice you promised? Where are the medicines? Where are the bandages? And various other things. So if these people don't give anything, they are told that if you next come and you don't bring, you'll be killed.
不参与不可以的，那人是被逼的，两头难啊！你不接济他们，你不可以。如果接济给政府一知道你就惨了，要抓你。
But the communists persist, forcing many settlers to find ways of smuggling food out of the closely guarded camps.
They had ingenious ways of hiding this rice. They put it inside a bicycle pump, you see, and then their latex pail. They had false bottoms. They put rice there, everything, medicines.
民军他就是挑那个大便哦，大便下面那个土很大了，上面是粪便了，下面是长东西，这样拿出去。
If you see women, most of them suddenly all became pregnant. Search properly. Those have big bras also search properly.
It will inevitably take time to break the bond between villager and communist. And no one can be completely certain that the Briggs Plan will work. For many, the end of 1951 will be remembered as the lowest point in the war. Few could imagine the situation getting worse. But at the beginning of October, fate deals the British a bitter and unexpected blow. On the 6th of October 1951, communist terrorists led by an especially brutal commander called Siew Ma wait on the winding road leading to Fraser's Hill, a hill station. At 1 p.m., a police convoy appears, followed by a black Rolls-Royce flying a Union Jack. Siew Ma opens fire, wounding several police officers and puncturing the tires of the Rolls, which skews to a halt. A British gentleman emerges from the back. He is shot in the head. Siew Ma orders his men to escape. He has no idea that he has killed the British High Commissioner, Sir Henry Gurney. As the news spreads, the British are in shock.
the head of the British colonial government had been killed by the communists. You know, my God, it would shake anybody up.
After Gurney's murder, the morale slumped among the local population as well as the British.
Oh, we are very sad. The whole country was shocked.
大国很高兴哦，你大的没有了，那个小的都没有作用了，那个大的指挥都不灵，小的都指挥不到。
As the communists rejoice, the British war on terror faces its worst crisis yet. Malaya, 1951. The British High Commissioner Sir Henry Gurney has been assassinated. That year alone has seen over 6,000 attacks, and civilian casualties have risen to over 1,800. Harold Briggs, architect of the Briggs Plan, leaves Malaya, ill and disillusioned. The war on communist terror is in crisis. But the British cannot afford to lose face. They must hunt down Gurney's assassins and bring them to justice. Attention immediately focuses on the Chinese town of Truss, just 30 kilometers from Fraser's Hill, where Gurney was killed. Truss already has a bad reputation. Many skirmishes have been fought with communists in the town or nearby.
You always felt that Truss was hostile. It struck me that not only the men and women, but even the children, even the dogs, looked at me in a hostile way when I went through Truss.
Then, British police intercept a communist courier with a cache of letters. They turn out to be messages sent to Truss residents by the gang that killed Gurney. It looks like the smoking gun. So a decision is made to punish Truss. All 2,000 inhabitants will be moved to a detention camp. British security forces descend on the town.
乱的是很乱啊，但是你也不可以不离开嘛，不离開他就抓你了咯。啊，如果你是認真不走啊，他可以放槍打我們咯。
早一兩日有同我哋講咗嘅，要將我哋再去怡保嗰邊嘅，即係講我哋要出嘅時候，只係你可以拎得幾多嘢，你就可以拎咯，唔可以再翻頭嚟攞咯。
The people of Truss will not return to their homes for 7 long years. The punishment of Truss is a turning point. It signals a new, more aggressive phase of the British war on terror. The driving force is the new British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill. He understands that the Malayan crisis is a key front in the global struggle against communism. Churchill demands a ruthless response and warns what happens in Malaya will have a profound influence on the rest of the world. A replacement must be found for Gurney, and the new High Commissioner must possess the talent and resolution to smash the communist threat once and for all. Churchill appoints a tough-minded veteran of the Second World War, Sir Gerald Templer.
He thought that I was the right person for the job. In a way, he'd take a chance on me, and so that he wanted me to sort the business as quick as possible.
Templer has no previous Asian experience, but he is widely admired as an original strategic thinker, a human dynamo with a fondness for ripe language. Churchill fuses the role of High Commissioner and Director of Operations, giving Templer decisive new powers, the right tools for a hard job. He will be the Supremo, a virtual dictator.
He was the man who controlled everything. He was a generalissimo dictator, and he knew his part and played it very well.
Templer knows that force will not be enough to beat the communist. He must win Malayan hearts and minds, a phrase made famous during the emergency.
In Malaya, General Templer ensured there was this top-down strategic coordination. Everyone had to sing from the same song sheet. The song sheet title was "Government is Your Friend."
Templar's skills as a political soldier will prove vital, for he has been given another brief: to prepare Malaya for self-governance.
Britain was prepared to give Malaya self-government within a few years' time. So Templar's role was to create the conditions for self-government, setting into foundation a structure that would eventually lead to the formation of strong Malayan political parties.
At first, Chin Peng's communists must be defeated, and Templar's mettle is tested just weeks after his arrival. On the 24th of March 1952, a British repair party arrives at Tanjung Malim to mend a water pipeline sabotaged by communist terrorists. The repair party is accompanied by 15 policemen. No one expects any trouble. But a trap has been set, as a policeman recalls.
Air tak diterima semua. Kata orang baik tu bocah Komunis. Terpaksalah pergi pula nak tengok rantau mana yang bocah baik tu. Lepas baru jalan, bom ditanam ke kanan. Panjang tanam bom tu. Bila orang tu masuk dalam perangkap tu baru ditembak. Bila tembakan macam 6 lawan. Melumpat ke sini, melumpat ni bom. Habis power ni kalau tengok tak boleh cakap lah.
有很多保安队伍被打死了，尸体运出来放在回教堂。
The communist ambush kills 14 men and wounds 8. Only one man escapes. Templar decides to show what he is made of. He will crack down hard. He arrives in Tanjung Malim and orders 350 Malay Chinese He announces a curfew and food rationing. The rice ration is cut to less than half. He says, "It doesn't amuse me to punish innocent people, but many of you are not innocent. You have information which you are too cowardly to give."
The curfew was 22 hours. The people can only go out between 12 and 2. It was a very drastic measure.
戒严的时候，丹永马林的居民呢，相当困难。
Kerja tak boleh, ke mana pun tak boleh. Begitulah undang-undang Templar.
2 weeks later, Templar orders Stage 2. The British distribute leaflets demanding information about local communists. Every adult must complete a form detailing everything they know. The completed, unsigned documents are collected in sealed boxes and sent directly to Templar's headquarters. For the new High Commissioner, the results are most gratifying. A rich trove of information spills from the open boxes. and Indians do not possess the basic right of citizenship, even those fighting on the front line of the war, like Yun Yuet Ling.
I was born here, but I never had citizenship here. And if the British went, I don't know where I would go, frankly.
In September 1952, the Malay Sultans agreed to extend citizenship to Chinese and Indian residents. For Yun and other Chinese Malayans, Templars' gift of citizenship meant everything.
That had very, very positive impact on the Chinese population.
The capstone in Templars' Hearts and Minds master plan is to launch a public relations campaign, Operation Service, demonstrating that the police are public servants dedicated to protecting law-abiding Malayans of all races.
Ready to serve, that was the slogan of the police in Operation Service. The whole idea being build a relationship with the population.
National morale perceptibly rises. There is a new sense of purpose and greater confidence in the government. But the campaign against Chin Peng's jungle army has not been won. Templar realizes that the war on terror is handicapped by one factor above all: poor intelligence.
We had not grasped the fact that you cannot do a jungle war without intelligence.
So Templar sets about reforming Malaya's inept special branch so that it can become the vanguard in the war on terror. Malaya, 1952. The arrival of a dynamic new High Commissioner, Sir Gerald Templar, has re-energized the war on terror. Spearheading the battle will be Malaya's intelligence service, Special Branch.
General Templar had a background in intelligence, and he knew that in a counter-insurgency campaign, you needed good intelligence to ensure that the police and the military were able to eliminate the real bad hats amongst the wider population of innocents. Intelligence was very critical.
Special branch is tasked with collecting intelligence. Without good intelligence, you will never be able to look for the enemy and plan and defeat the enemy.
Templar orders Special Branch to target the communist leadership. They must decapitate the insurgent forces.
Sources of information would be, of course, agents and informers, which a Special Branch would use, and also the analysis of captured communist documents. And slowly from that sort of information, they would build up the hierarchical structure of the Communist Party from the very beginning, one by one.
For Special Branch, nothing is off limits.
You knew absolutely everything about the person. What his habits were, did he smoke, what his sex life was like, who his girlfriends were, everything we could possibly think of.
In this intelligence war, the perilous task of gathering information will fall to Asian officers. They must be the eyes and ears of Special Branch. White Europeans will be the backroom boys.
It was not possible for them to go down on the ground. They would stick out like a sore thumb. So, the brunt of collecting intelligence and working on the ground rested with the Chinese officers. As the saying goes, you need a thief to catch a thief.
Special Branch launched their campaign by striking Chin Peng's all-important communications network. Communist couriers, usually on bicycles, crisscross Malaya, carrying messages from one remote fighting unit to another, often located hundreds of miles away. Chin Peng uses this jungle network to coordinate attacks all over Malaya.
The Communist Party of Malaya has used couriers in the jungle. They operated from one unit to another, carrying messages, and there'll be jungle letterboxes where they deposit those messages to be picked up later on by the second leg of the courier trail.
The couriers transmit a vast quantity of secret information. Messages are often written in tiny Chinese characters on rolled-up paper slips, which usually require a magnifying glass to read.
Messages are usually rolled up very finely, sometimes so fine that it's the size of a toothpick only.
The communist couriers hide their messages in fruit or a tube of toothpaste or on their bicycles.
Gulung halus-halus. Halus-halus gulung. Masuk dalam itu bersika di lubang. Tu boleh hantarlah. Sampai sana, kita ada asarat pula.
Special branch officers realize that if they can break this network, they will access a rich source of data and, they hope, cripple the communist fighting machine. Language skills are essential, and British police officers like Gus Fletcher are sent on crash courses in Chinese.
It was a very tough course because it was one teacher, one pupil throughout the course. You couldn't sit at the back of the class and doze off. A Confucian monk taught us. He couldn't speak a word of English. Lovely old man. Lei Yinghong, who wore a gown and hands in his sleeves and little cloth shoes and and a Confucian beard down to here. Lovely.
To tap into the courier system, special branch officers must turn the couriers. In other words, persuade them to come over to the government side, along with their precious messages.
Our penetration of the courier system was very good.
And once the couriers have been turned, special branch agents can use them to track down the communist hideouts.
When the courier surrendered, it was a good thing. He would take it to the camp and then you could attack it.
Special Branch's success in breaching the communist courier system was all down to basic human greed.
You surrender, especially when you come out with your arms, you get a reward for surrendering and an additional reward for bringing out the arms, depending on which arms.
In the early 1950s, the Korean War pushes up the price of tin and rubber, making the Malayan government richer. And because the reward system is proving so effective, High Commissioner Templer can triple the money on offer. Top prize, Communist leader Chin Peng. Templer sets his price at $250,000. Some feel queasy about the system, but no one disputes that it works very well. And it wasn't just the humble couriers who start taking money. Many communist fighters, exhausted by years of hardship, begin to sell out their comrades.
政府每时每刻都做这一套的，叫你出来，我给你大屋，给你汽车，但是也会有个别软脚啊，他们不能坚持，这个就是他机会。
Those communists who couldn't resist such enticements would then be pumped for information by special branch interrogators like Leon Comber.
I often used to listen or take part in interrogation of those people, and once they'd settled down and they'd had coffee and they saw that they weren't going to be beaten up, they were quite happy to reveal tremendous amount of information about their comrades and what they'd been doing and about the location of communist camps and the location of courier routes through the jungle.
Depending on the information he or she supplies to us, if they produce results, then the payment is dependent on the ranks of those we either capture or we kill. Now, captures normally the reward is double than that of a kill, because a live body is more important to us than a dead body.
Rewards are not the only weapon in the British arsenal. The Malayan emergency is also a battle of ideas, so an ambitious propaganda campaign is devised. The British shrewdly turn to a Chinese Malayan who knows the enemy mind inside out. His name is CC2. Like Chin Peng, he has been schooled by the British in the black arts of psychological warfare, or PSYOPs.
CC2 is a very interesting guy because he had both an English and a Chinese education. He had learned the principles of psychological warfare from the British. But he had something the British did not have, a good understanding of the language and a good understanding of how the communist mind worked, because he knew them very well. He almost joined them. He knew how they thought.
By now, the Royal Air Force is playing a crucial role in Britain's war on terror. So propaganda mastermind CC2 prints millions of propaganda leaflets and launches an aerial paper barrage deep inside Chin Peng's jungle strongholds. Whenever a communist leader is persuaded to give himself up, the aircraft return, equipped with loudspeakers to spread the news. Your leader has surrendered. Why are you still in the jungle? But the hardcore communist leadership are not impressed.
因为他用飞机去广播，我们讲狗叫机又来了，他就一直在天上叫，来喊屁我们都不管，他丢下那些什么啊，我们看了都拿来烧。
The RAF does not only drop paper leaflets. Special Branch coordinate devastating bombing raids aimed at the insurgents' jungle camps. The bomber pilots need to pinpoint their targets as accurately as possible. And in Malaya's immense jungles, this is no easy task. Special Branch come up with an ingenious, high-tech solution. In their jungle camps, Chin Peng's fighters rely on radios to listen in to the worldwide communist networks. But if they need new batteries or a set repaired, they must come down to the towns. By setting up a network of informants, Special Branch manages to get hold of a few communist radios and secretly insert their own special gift.
So when they asked for a wireless set, we would get hold of our people in KL, put a little false valve into it which gave a signal. We'd alert the aeroplanes and we'd take a signal flying over. Then we'd have a ground vehicle which would do it from the ground as well. Where they crossed, that was where the wireless was being played, and we could then bomb.
The radio raid is a spectacular success.
When I went in afterwards, one man escaped. I found him sitting by the river, completely demoralized, and always bombs, bombs, noise, and he had a terrible time.
As Special Branch steadily builds up its intelligence networks, their operations begin to chip away at the communist leadership, sometimes with macabre results. On one memorable occasion, 3 communists flag down a train and demand to be taken to the nearest police station. Tim Hatton is alerted and rushes to meet the party. He is in for a nasty surprise.
And so we drove out to a little shed I knew in the middle of nowhere, which I used as a safe house. Then the leader of the party produced his pack, a big green pack, dumped it on the table, and I said, "What's that?" He said, "It's a captain." I said, "It's a captain?" And I looked more closely at it, and I could see black strings of hair coming round all over it, and bits of blood on the side. And I said, "It's a human head." The bodyguard to the captain lifted up by its hair, and there was our cook, Central Committee member of the Communist Party, grinning at me. His eyes were open.
Looking straight at him is a prize catch. Our cook was one of the communists' top 5. His bodyguards had spotted a leaflet offering a massive reward for their boss, dead or alive. It was a temptation impossible to resist. Our cook's betrayers deliver another prize, a document setting out Chin Peng's 5-year plan. It tells a dramatic story, proving that Templars' efforts are beginning to pay off. Harassed by RAF bombers, army assault, and undermined by a succession of betrayals, Chin Peng has made a decision to flee. The architect of the insurgency is on the run. But he has not given up. He plans to set up a new base in southern Thailand from where he will direct the campaign. And deep inside the Malayan jungles, the communists have set up new attack units, recruited from indigenous tribal people. They must be Templars' next target. Deep within Malaya's jungles live thousands of Aboriginal people. They are called Orang Asli. It means original people. During the Japanese occupation, British insurgency unit Force 136 and its communist allies depended on the Orang Asli, tapping their survival skills and matchless knowledge of the deep forests. Now, in 1952, a flood of intelligence reports reveals that the communists have reconnected with the Orang Asli.
Hutan tu dunia dia, kampung dia. Dia ke mana dia pun boleh pergi. Bantuan asal yang sebenarnya kepada usaha revolusi kita sangat besar juga.
As government forces tightened their stranglehold on the communist supply lines, the Orang Asli plugged the gap.
Makan gantung pada orang asli. Makan ubi.
It is vital to neutralize this new threat. To begin with, the British try to resettle the Orang Asli, but this tactic fails disastrously. So the new High Commissioner, Sir Gerald Templar, decides to take the war to the deep jungle and builds forts that he hopes will protect the Aborigines from the communists.
Orders are put out to the police to get to know the population better, win over the hostile Aborigines who at the time held the key to the emergency.
Roy Follows, a British police officer, is assigned to command one of the new jungle outposts, Fort Brooke, built in a remote part of the Cameron Highlands. To get there is a long and difficult journey.
You had to walk to these forts or go by raft or what have you. Helicopters were only few and far between then. I walked from the Cameron Islands over the mountains at the time that the area had not mapped or explored. Fort Brooke was 2,500 feet high, surrounded by barbed wire. All the huts made of bamboo, just bare floor. Water came from the river, no electric, and it was being so isolated, all the food had to be dropped in once a week by airdrop.
Like the new villages, these jungle forts must fulfill two very different roles. They are police strongholds, strategic bases for patrolling deep into the jungle. But at the same time, they must be community centers to win over Orang Asli hearts and minds. The forts bring to these isolated communities modern medicine and education for the first time.
First, the children were very frightened of me, but you could understand them being frightened because the communists had drilled into them over the years that if the Orang Putih sees you, he'll eat you. He'll have you for dinner. So I had to break down this barrier first, but after a while they realised I was okay. So I was asked to build a school for the local Aborigines, and a couple of the policemen used to teach the Aborigines simple words because they could not speak Malay or had only a smattering of Malay. They had such a culture shock. I remember once I had contacted a tribe who'd never seen a European before, and they came into the fort, and I happened to put my radio on, and when they heard a voice coming from this box, they were terrified and ran away.
The British feed and educate the Orang Asli, but they also need them to join the war on terror as combatants. A special Orang Asli militia is formed, called Senoi Prak, Man of War.
Senoi Prak ni makna dia orang perang. Kami orang asli ni bila kami melawan tu, baik kami pakai sumpit, baik kami pakai lembing ke, bila melawan tak sedar diri. Sampai habis biar nyawa meninggal pun tak apa. Itu adat kami orang asli lah.
Trained by the British SAS, the Senoi Prak strike hard at the communists in the deep jungles. and by 1956, the new forts have broken Orang Asli bonds with the Communists. All over Malaya, Templars' surge is at last turning the tide of the war. The Communist leadership has been decimated, and Chin Peng himself is in Thailand. The British step up the pressure on these hardcore Communist brigades holding out inside Malaya.
By that time, the security situation had greatly improved, and so the people remaining in the jungle, in the Communist ranks, were essentially the very hardcore. They needed to be starved into submission.
They survive only thanks to supplies of rice from some of the Chinese resettlement villages. The solution is radical but down to earth. Instead of supplying villagers with raw rice, the new village authorities will cook it first. The strategy is called central cooking.
他怀疑你们在怎么情况之下来接济他们队长，后来他出了一招，米不能让你们自己煮，把一个大锅放了，全村人到时到后那个煮好了，在那个一个集中那个地方，你们去拿那个饭。
Central cooking has a deadly effect. The flow of rice from village to jungle dries up. Isolated in the jungle, many communist fighters begin to starve.
我们夫妻也是很辛苦啊，没有2次饿肚子，牺牲得很大，饿死啊。
Dalam pertempuran, agaknya banyak juga kawan kita korban. Tapi itu patut. Ini pengorbanan di dalam keguluran. Nah itu dasar. Sampai ke tak boleh berjalan, tak boleh bergerak. Saya makan kayu, buah dan puyuk gebuh. Gebuh tak mau umput, makan-makan. Sumpah itu. Itu yang pahit betul lah, bukan bohong lah.
Hunger forces the desperate communist leaders to cut down the size of their units to cope with rapidly dwindling supplies.
在那个时候呢，我们人员也减少，就可以在那边维持，所以影响到我们大部队啊，不能够集中在一起，这样变成打仗的力量啊削弱了。
With the communists on the run, the British make sure that ordinary Malayans know that the emergency is being won, that the communists need no longer be feared. To ram the point home, security forces put on display communists killed in firefights, the fruits of victory. Even schoolchildren are not spared these grisly exhibitions, as teacher Ted Miles recalls.
On the way to school, we had to walk by the police station, and often we would see the bodies of dead communists lying on the ground in front of the police station. They would be brought in by helicopter and spread out, I suppose for identification purposes to start with, but it always was a stark reminder that there was a war going on.
We try to identify them. So we place it at the foot of the police station, and then the public will come and have a look. We have our men mixing with them. We will see whether tears come out or not. Then we would follow and do proper investigation to find out.
Malaya has endured 5 years of undeclared war, the emergency. Now Sir Gerald Templar must prepare war-weary Malaya for a new challenge, independence. Malaya, 1953. Government forces have begun to win the war on terror against Chin Peng's communist insurgents. Now, the High Commissioner Sir Gerald Templar must turn his attention to the challenge of independence. But to move forward on the political front, the British must prove that they at last have made Malaya safe. In 1953, communist attacks have fallen from more than 6,000 in 1951 to just over 1,000. Civilian casualties have dropped dramatically from 1,024 to 143. Reassured by these impressive results, Templer announces the creation of so-called white areas, starting in a district in Malacca where British troops have successfully cleared communist insurgents. In these white areas, ordinary Malayans are liberated from food restrictions and curfews. It is a calculated risk, but one that Templer believes is well worth taking.
The districts neighboring the white area will see what's happening and say, hey, we want that too. So let's cooperate with government. So we also get all these lousy emergency regulations removed so we can enjoy ourselves as well. So it was a very important psychological warfare initiative.
每个员工觉得很放心，很好哦。吃进不必跟他那张监听什么都不用，也没有curfew了啊。
The white area strategy makes it easier to imagine a future Malaya, free at last. On the 31st of May 1954, Templer flies home. The war has not yet been won, but the man now called the Tiger of Malaya has at least persuaded all Malayans to fight together against a common foe.
General Templer came in. He was the right man at the right time for the right job. If it had been a lesser man, I don't think he would have been able to break the backbone of the Communist Federation.
In many parts of Malaya, the national mood has lifted. Casualties are falling, and the number of areas officially declared white continue to rise. The stage is at last set for independence. It is time to turn from bullet to ballot. Attention now focuses on a legendary Malayan, the father of independence, Tunku Abdul Rahman. Tunku is a veteran nationalist who chooses a democratic, non-violent route to win freedom. Now he is the leader of the New Alliance Party, a coalition of the Malay, Chinese and Indian parties. On the 31st of July 1955, Malayans go to the polls in a federal election.
The most significant feature of this national event was a merger of the three major parties representing the main races of Malaya into a political alliance to contest the election.
Turnout is an astonishing 85%. Tunku's Alliance Party sweeps the board, winning 51 out of 52 seats. Tunku himself becomes Malaya's first chief minister. But Malaya is still at war. The emergency has not ended. Now the burden of wrapping up once and for all falls on the shoulders of the new chief minister. Tunku takes immediate action. He offers an amnesty to the communist insurgents. Throw down your arms, or you will miss out on independence. Soon, word comes from Thailand. The notorious communist leader Chin Peng wants to talk. Tunku agrees to meet him at Baling, a small town just south of the Thai border.
Hopes ran high, not only among the Baling townsfolk, but among all the people of Malaya, that by some miracle the communists would repent of the evil they had done and surrender for the good of the country. All necks craned for a glimpse of the #1 terrorist. There he is, that's him. Chin Peng, directly responsible for a brutal 7-year campaign of murder and terrorism against the ordinary people of Malaya.
If you look at him, you wouldn't think that he would be the villain that he was. And when we talked to him as man to man, he seemed to be very gentlemanly in his conduct. And so we had one whole day talking to one another on the terms.
Chin Peng offers Tunku peace, but in return he demands that the Malaysian Communist Party must be officially recognized, and he proposes only to lay aside his weapons, not to disarm. He has come to negotiate, not surrender.
It is the words that came from his mouth which I could never forget to the end of my day. He said, as between you and I, he said, you are anti-communist, I am a communist. There can never be coexistence. I will always carry on with my communist activities.
Behind the scenes, the British are anxious that Tunku may give in. But he stands firm, and at noon the following day, the talks break down irrevocably. Chin Peng goes back to the jungle. He will fight on.
谢我们无罪，意思要放下武器投降。那我们坚决做不到，打到一个人都要打。
我们就这里一条了，就是真的打到底了，打到合理承认马共。
Tunku returns to Kuala Lumpur without a peace deal, but the independence train is unstoppable. And on the 31st of August 1957, Tunku joyously proclaims that Malaya is a free nation at last.
Merdeka! Merdeka! I will never forget the word Merdeka shouted by Tunku. And we felt that we are a different country now, we are free.
On the very same day, Tunku withdraws his amnesty offer to the communists, and in their jungle camps, Chin Peng's foot soldiers denounce him for selling out.
Merdeka waktu itu bukan merdeka tak sesungguh habis segala-galanya tak. Dia merdeka setengah separuh. Dipegang oleh British juga waktu itu. Di belakangnya ada sokongan British lagi, tak cukup lagi.
Tunku already achieved the independence, so what are you guys still doing, you know? What are you still fighting for? You are going against the Malayan nation.
Then when we got independent, they still fight us. So where's the logic? You know?
这样的独立来讲，权力还是在人家的手，还是英军准是10多万军队还在那个时候。 你独立有什么用啊？
As the cheering fades, Malayans must face up to the reality that these hardcore communists, battered though they are, remain resolute. Special Branch Officer Yun Yuet Leng knows he cannot yet hand in his badge.
I never thought about independence when it actually happened because I was busy collecting intelligence. Day and night I was working.
For the security forces, there is unfinished business. It is time to launch Operation Ginger. In 1957, Malayans have little time to enjoy independence. The emergency has not ended, and the war goes on. So, in January 1958, the new Malayan government unleash what they hope will be the final offensive to break the communists for good and track down the man who murdered High Commissioner Sir Henry Gurney. It is called Operation Ginger, and it will make use of the black arts of secrecy and deception, codenamed Q-Ops. Special branch officers will masquerade as communist insurgents to penetrate the last jungle camps.
Q-Ops actually were more successful and planned in greater scale towards the later years of the emergency. We knew so much about communist organization. Almost everything about the leaders, the way he lived, his friends, the way he walks, the way he talks, that we could impersonate. There was a lot of risk, no doubt, but they were all calculated risks.
Top of the list for the Q-Ops men is Hugh Ma, the communist who led the team that killed Sir Henry Gurney, the High Commissioner. They have narrowed the hunt to an area near Ipoh. But Hugh Ma has slipped through the special branch net countless times. Then his luck runs out. One of his bodyguards spots a pamphlet offering a reward for his boss, dead or alive.
One of the bodyguards came down the hill on the pretext of getting supplies for the three of them. So he came to Special Branch in Ipoh. 2 bodyguards had planned to kill him for a long time, but they were not sure what would be their fate if they killed him.
Disguised as a rubber tapper, Leong grabs a bicycle and heads into the jungle with the bodyguard. A second bodyguard is waiting in the camp with Siu Ma.
At the foot of the hill, I rang the bell, and then the guy on top shot him.
The announcement that the notorious Siu Ma has been killed is a triumphant climax to Operation Ginger. By 1960, hundreds of die-hard communists have given themselves up. Attacks have virtually ceased. Most importantly, Special Branch is able to report to the new Malayan government that all the communist commanders have fled to Thailand. It seems that the war is at last over. It is time to proclaim to the world that Malaya is at peace.
Victory Day dawns bright and clear. The focus is on the federal capital, where celebrations begin with the arrival of His Majesty for the big parade. On this triumphant morning, Malayans of all races are gathered not merely to watch the massive review. With gratitude and pride, they come in their thousands to pay tribute to the men who bore the brunt of battle.
The price of winning Malaya's war on terror was a high one, and it was paid in blood. By the end of the 12-year-long undeclared war, at least 11,000 people had been killed. Jubilation was inevitably mixed with regret.
You cannot erase this overnight, you see. So many of all these incidents are deep down in my mind. And for me to be happily saying, oh, it's all over, let's forget, and forgive and forget, no. Forgive also no, forget also no.
People should look back, what the sacrifice had been done by security forces, by the overseas soldiers, armies, the Gurkhas. There are hundreds of security forces who have been killed, hundreds of civilians have been killed. I never will forgive, because I saw a lot of death.
And 50 years later, this sense of loss has still not diminished. Every year, veterans from all races, from all over the world, gather at God's Little Acre to commemorate those who gave their lives to win the war on terror.
During the emergency, I did everything I did the way I did, taking all the risks and everything, because I believed that there was no solution except to form a multiracial nation.
The communist rebels failed to stop Malaya developing into a vibrant and wealthy independent nation, one of the tiger economies of Asia. Today, Malaysia remains a diverse and challenging society. But the harsh experience of the emergency, the undeclared war, provided an education in putting differences aside and working together in pursuit of a common goal. The emergency was the crucible of freedom.